Hello, watch enthusiasts. This is a video I've been meaning to make for quite a long time because I truly believe this is something every watch collector and watch lover should understand. For years now, people have been saying, almost like a scary mystery, that modern replica watches are so close to the real thing that it's honestly frightening. And I feel like someone really needs to clear this up properly. Are they actually that similar? How scary is it, really? And most importantly, what are the real differences that make the price gap between a genuine watch and a replica so huge? The two watches I'm showing you today, let me be clear from the start. One of them is genuine, and the other one is a replica. At first, some of you might not be able to tell them apart right away because this is a top-grade replica, the best quality you can get, with a price tag of over $300. But after you finish watching this video, I think your perspective might completely change. First, I want to be clear right from the start. This is not going to be a comparison video where I point out tiny flaws on replicas, like whether the text is slightly too big, the font looks a bit off, or some small detail here and there doesn't match the genuine watch. Personally, I don't think that approach really works in real life. If you learn watches that way, you'll only remember the exact models you've already seen reviews of. And when it comes to actual buying or spotting watches in the wild, it's just too difficult. There's no way anyone can memorize every single detail of how every genuine model is supposed to look. More importantly, replicas today are constantly being updated. The moment someone points out a flaw in a review, factories release a new version and fix it almost immediately. And just like that, you can get fooled all over again. I'm speaking from real experience here. I used to try memorizing those details myself. And honestly, it's not practical at all. If anything, it just makes you more paranoid about replicas. So in this video, I want to focus on the real differences between genuine watches and replicas. In one clear explanation, why is the genuine watch so much more expensive? What is actually better about it? And which parts of quality replicas still can truly match, no matter how close they look? I'll be completely honest with you guys. The day replicas can genuinely match the quality of the real thing, while costing tens of times less, I'd probably buy the replica myself. Before we dive into the details, I want to set one important foundation first. What a luxury watch should actually be. The first thing to understand is this. A genuine watch isn't great just because of the original design, and a replica isn't good enough just because it looks the same. There's a phrase that even people in replica watch forums love to use. Gen is gen. In simple terms, it means this. A genuine watch will always be superior. No matter how close a replica gets in appearance, the quality of the workmanship is still on a completely different level. Let me give you a clear example. Take a Rolex Submariner. The cost of the sapphire crystal alone, just that single piece of glass, is already more expensive than an entire replica watch. So realistically, there's no way a replica crystal can match the quality of the genuine one. At this point, some of you might be thinking, yeah, but replicas are made in China. The production cost must be way cheaper. And that's true, but here's the thing. Brands like Rolex don't just blindly overpay for parts. If manufacturers in China could produce sapphire crystals with the same quality at a much lower cost, Rolex could absolutely source them. You also need to understand this. Swiss-made does not mean every single part has to be manufactured in Switzerland. Components can be sourced from other countries. What matters is that final assembly and quality control happen in Switzerland, and that at least 60% of the value of the components is Swiss-made. And this brings us back to that phrase, gen is gen. Even people who collect replicas say it themselves, because when you look closely, the genuine watch almost always has higher manufacturing quality across nearly every component. That's why the first thing I always look at when judging whether a watch is genuine or not is overall build quality. To the naked eye, a replica might look very close. But once you put a loupe on it, that's where the differences become obvious. And that's exactly why, in my watch reviews, You see so many macro shots. Those close-up details reveal the level of craftsmanship, the finishing work, and the real production cost behind the watch. This is also why I often recommend that if someone is considering a high-end replica, they're usually better off buying an entry-level luxury watch instead. You get better manufacturing quality, better durability, and far better long-term value. Why spend serious money on a replica that only looks like an expensive watch, but still can't match the finishing or build quality of even an entry-level genuine timepiece? Alright, now let's really dive into the details. Let's break down what I mean when I say the gap between a genuine watch and a fake is actually huge. How big is that gap? What does it really look like? And how can you tell the difference? Can you really tell just by looking at photos? The answer is yes, you absolutely can. You might have heard some YouTubers talk about ultra high-end watches before. Brands like A. Lange and Söhne, Patek Philippe, basically the very top tier of watchmaking. And a lot of them describe it this way. Looking at those watches is like watching a high-definition TV. The closer you look, the more detail you see. Everything gets sharper, cleaner, more defined. That's because watches at that level are finished by hand. Master watchmakers use magnification, and they polish and refine every surface slowly, carefully, bit by bit. Polished areas are mirror sharp. Brushed surfaces are clean, even, and beautifully consistent. Now, compare that to watches like Rolex, Omega, or Panerai. These are still high-quality watches, but they're mass-produced. They rely much more on machines, and they don't receive the same level of hand finishing as those ultra-high-end brands. Because of that, the sharpness and refinement step down a level. And as you move further down the ladder, the level of finishing and craftsmanship continues to drop to match production cost. By the time you reach entry-level brands like Seiko or Citizen, the difference is like watching TV in standard definition. And here's the key point. This is extremely important. Even entry-level genuine watches still have better build quality, sharper finishing, and better overall execution than most replica watches. Now, let me give you a practical example. I've got two Panerai watches here. From this distance, especially through video, you might not immediately tell which one is genuine and which one is fake. Part of that is because video gets compressed during streaming. But now, I'm going to bring them closer, one by one. And after everything we've just talked about, I want you to take a guess. Once you understand what to look for, you'll be surprised how quickly you can tell which one is real and which one isn't. The watch on the left is the radiomere, and the one on the right is the luminor. Some of you might already be able to tell which one is fake, and honestly, if you can, that's great. Let me give you a small hint. Don't focus on tiny technical details yet. Just trust your overall feeling. Look at the beauty, the cleanliness, the refinement. Things like balance, symmetry, and neatness don't happen by accident. They come from effort, precision, and very good tools. Tools that are designed to produce something people can actually feel and recognize as high quality. From this distance, take a guess. Which one do you think is genuine and which one is fake? I'm not revealing the answer yet. If you're still not sure or you still can't tell, don't worry, we'll move in closer. First, let's take a closer look at the radiomere. Okay, now let's look at the luminor. At this point, even without me saying anything, can you start to see it? The dial is actually the part where replica watches try the hardest to look identical. So if you can spot differences here, the rest becomes much easier. If you already have an answer in your head, alright, I'll reveal it now. The genuine watch is the radiomere. The fake one is the luminor. And if you still can't tell, don't panic. This really does take some training for your eyes. You need to learn where to look. Let's focus on the 12 o'clock marker. Both of these Panerai dials use a sandwich dial, which means the top layer is cut out. to reveal the luminous material underneath. That cut tells you a lot about the tools used and the level of precision in manufacturing. Replica watches simply can't use the same tools or achieve the same level of refinement. Because honestly, if they could do it that well, they'd just make their own watches and make a lot more money. Think of it like two surgeons. One has a perfectly sharp scalpel. The other has a dull blade. No matter how skilled the surgeon is, the cut from a dull blade will never be as clean as one from a sharp one. Now, if you look at these images side by side, you can clearly see it. The genuine watch is cleaner, sharper, and has more depth, especially in areas that are supposed to be sharp angles. Look closely at the top of the number 1. On the genuine dial, the tip curves inward into a sharp, elegant point. You can feel the precision just by looking at it. On the replica, that sharp tip is almost gone. It looks rounded, like it was simply cut off. And that right there is the difference between genuine craftsmanship and imitation. And this level of refinement, this sharpness and cleanliness, is exactly what gives a genuine watch that aura when you wear it or see it in person. It's also the reason why, when you take photos, especially still photos, the images look noticeably sharper. It's not because your camera suddenly got better. It's not because your lens magically improved. It's because the object itself is sharper, cleaner, and more precisely finished. And it's not just one single component where the genuine watch is better. It's better in almost every part. Now let's move on to the hands. The hands on a genuine watch tell you a lot about the level of craftsmanship and manufacturing quality. The cuts, the straightness, the lack of distortion, the symmetry. They almost act as an indicator of where that watch sits in the market. With a brand like Panerai, the level of refinement you expect is very close to watches like Rolex, Omega, or Breitling. But once you look at replica watches, the difference becomes obvious. The finishing quality drops noticeably. Edges that are crisp on the genuine watch start to look soft or uneven. You see small distortions, roughness, and imperfections that clearly reveal how the watch was produced. And once you train your eyes to see these things, you really can't unsee them anymore. Let's look at one more example. Just like before, one of these is genuine, and the other one is a top-tier replica. I want you guys to take everything we've talked about so far and try to guess which one is real and which one is fake. Let's start from a normal viewing distance first. At this point, I think some of you can already tell. Alright, I'll reveal it. The standard Heuer Carrera 1887 is the genuine watch. The TAG Heuer edition is the replica. If you still can't tell yet, don't worry at all. Let's move in a little closer. Start with the hands. On the genuine watch, you'll notice better alignment, cleaner finishing, and more depth. Look closely at the area I'm pointing to. This is where manufacturing quality really shows. At this level, a genuine Heuer would never allow a watch like this to leave the factory. Even though a real Heuer might occasionally have tiny dust particles on the dial, there's no way the hands or the assembly work, which show this kind of rough tooling marks. And once you see that, the difference becomes very clear. And this right here is the best quality replica you can buy. Even at this level, its manufacturing quality still can't compete with a genuine watch in the same price range. And like I mentioned earlier, the dial is where replica watches put in the most effort. That's the part they try hardest to make look right. But once we flip the watch over and look at the case back, the differences become much more obvious, especially on watches with display case backs. This is basically the weakest point of replica watches. Trying to make a movement look like the real thing is extremely expensive, and even top-tier replicas that attempt this still have to control costs to keep the price low enough to sell. So let's start by looking at some close-up shots first, without me telling you which one is real and which one is fake. Watch number 1. Alright, now watch number 2. At this point, if you've been following along, you probably already know which one is genuine and which one isn't. When it comes to the movement, the differences are much larger than on the dial because replicas simply can't afford the same level of precision. Now I'm going to switch back and forth between the real and the fake so you can test yourself and see if your eyes are starting to catch it. And I haven't even talked about tolerance levels yet. This is another major weak point for replicas. Genuine watches are manufactured with much tighter tolerances. That means smaller gaps everywhere. The distance between the date wheel and the date window is smaller. The gap between the crystal and the dial is smaller. The movement sits closer and more precisely inside the case. Replica factories have to allow more margin for error, especially during hand installation and assembly. And all of this adds up. Even at a normal viewing distance, a genuine watch just looks cleaner, tighter, and more refined. On many replicas, the dial looks like it's sitting too deep under the crystal, or the movement looks too far away from the case back. Something you'd never expect from a true luxury watch. Honestly, for me personally, sometimes I can tell from a quick glance. If the dial looks too sunken, or the movement looks oddly spaced, I already know. Sometimes I can even tell just from seeing it on someone's wrist for a split second, and this is exactly the point I'm trying to make. If you only memorize specific flaws, like this replica gets this detail wrong, you're going to get fooled again. For example, the 2 Heuer chronographs we looked at earlier actually have different looking movements. If you memorize exactly what the genuine one looks like, sure, you can spot the fake. But once the replica factories update that detail, game over, you're fooled again. That's why understanding overall manufacturing quality matters so much more. Take the 2 Panerai watches we looked at. They use completely different movements with different layouts and designs. But if you know what genuine quality looks like, you don't need to memorize tiny details. You can just see it. If you made it this far in the video, congratulations. I honestly think you're now ready to step into the world of watches. Next, I'm going to show you a mid-tier brand like Alpina, a brand many people aren't very familiar with, and compare its movement finishing to a high-end Panerai replica. Just from that comparison alone, the difference in value becomes obvious. And that's without even talking about durability. So please, don't just remember, where replicas still don't look like the real thing. That approach will get you fooled again and again. Here's a real example. For years, people said the Panerai 312 replica couldn't independently adjust the hour hand like the genuine one. If you relied on that today, you'd be fooled immediately. The Panerai 312 replica I showed in this video does have an independently adjustable hour hand now. And after midnight, the date even jumps correctly, just like the genuine watch. Finally, for everyone who stayed until the end, thank you so much. I know this was a long video, but I really wanted to explain this as clearly as possible. If you enjoy content like this, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Those small actions honestly help the channel more than you might think.